Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Today we're going to create pattern tiles in Adobe Photoshop, and we're going to use the Symmetry tools in Photoshop, and we're going to overcome the limitation of that tool. So I'm going to click here on New File, and because I'm going to create a tile, I want something that is square. So I'm going to start with my document being 2000 by 2000 pixels in size. If you're going to need a final tile that is larger than that, then make a tile that's larger than that before you begin. Now I have a white background here, that's just fine. When you go to use the mirror tools in Adobe Photoshop, they're only available for a certain number of tools. For example, the paintbrush and also for the eraser. You can see it up here. But they're not available for tools such as the custom shapes tools or the pen tool, so you can't use the mirror options there. So we're going to overcome the limitation of this. I'm going to click on the brush tool and I'm going to set up the type of rotation I want. So I want to be using dual axis for my symmetry. Now before I finish off, I'm going to hold down the Alt key and just drag to put the symmetry all the way over this document and click the check mark. Now I'm also going to add some lines here to make things a bit easier. So I'm going to the pen tool, and if you don't like the pen tool, that's just fine because this is going to be really simple to do. So I've got a stroke but no fill because I'm just going to be drawing a line, and you want a fairly hefty sort of stroke so you can see it. You're going to start up here in the top corner of the document. You're just going to click once, and then you're going to click down the very end and then press escape. And when I click away, you'll see that I just have a pink line through the document, and it's on this shape layer because when I used the pen tool I had shape selected here. Shape's the easiest one to use, so I suggest you use it. I'm going to drag this onto the plus sign, so I've got two of these shape layers, and then I'm just going to rotate it, so I'll make sure it's selected here, and I'll choose edit and then transform path, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. And when I click away, you'll see that I've got crosshairs here. This is going to make my alignment just a little bit easier. So I'm going to click on the new layer and I'm going to start doing some painting. Now if you're not really good at painting, one of the problems you're going to have is that you can only use the paintbrush tool and you can't use the shapes tool. Well, let's see how we can get around that. I'm going to create a brand new file, just to one side. File, new, and mine's going to be 500 pixels by 500 pixels in size. What we're going to do is we're going to make some paintbrushes this way. So we can use the custom shapes to make paintbrushes. Now I've already made this fleur-de-lis as a paintbrush, but you go to the custom shapes tool and then you can select one of these shapes. Now if you don't have the legacy shapes added to Photoshop, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go to Window and then Shapes, and then you're going to the flyout menu and you're going to select here legacy shapes and more, and that will add all the legacy shapes into Photoshop. Now I've gone ahead and done a bit more than just that, and I've arranged mine so that they're just easier to find, but you'll just add the legacy shapes so you'll have access to them, because if you don't, you've really only got flowers and boats and trees and wild animals, so there's a limited number of shapes that you can use. But once you add back in the legacy shapes, you've got heaps and heaps of things you can use, and here they are here. So what I've been doing is just working out which of these shapes are going to be useful to me in terms of making tiles, and it might be a little bit hit or miss as to what you're going to want to use, but after doing it once or twice you should have a fair idea as to what might be valuable to you. Now for me this time I'm thinking this flower shape might be interesting, so I'm going to select it. I've got the shape tool selected. I have no fill, but I'm going to set my fill to black because brushes are black or white or shades of grey, and I don't want any stroke because that's not going to work for me at this stage. So I'm just going to drag out my shape. I'm going to hold the shift key down so that it is scaled in its original proportions. So this can be saved as a brush. So all I'm going to do is go to edit and then define brush preset. Now I can give it a name. I'm not going to bother right now. I'll just click OK. And then what you would do is just turn that off and add another layer and go and create something else. So you're going to come in and start assembling a series of brushes that you can use. And I'm thinking this one might be nice too. So I'm just going to drag out to create it. Now if I think this spiral isn't dark enough, I can do something with it because I've got it as a shape here. I'm just going to click on this layer, I'm going to the FX icon, and I'm going to add a stroke to it. So I'll just click on stroke. Now last time I was in this dialog, I did an inside stroke. I'm going to do an outside stroke this time. And I used a light grey, but this time I'm going to use the same black as I used to fill this shape. Now I think it's too big, but that's easily solved. I'm just going to wind it back down a bit. So now we've gone from this shape here to this shape here. So we've got a sort of tighter, thicker spiral. So I'm just going to click OK. Now if I'm happy with that, I can save that as a brush too. Edit, define brush preset, and here's my spiral brush. So let's now go back to the tile document and we can start working on it. I have an empty layer selected here. I've got black as my foreground color. I have my brush selected and the most recently used brush is showing up here. Now you will also probably want your brushes panel, so click on this because it's a little bit difficult to rotate brushes and you may want to rotate them. So what I'm going to do is use this line to actually put in some flowers. So let's go and select the flower brush that I made earlier. And I'm just going to check its size. It looks pretty good. If I want to rotate it, I can just rotate it here. So I could rotate it around so that, say, the petals go along this line. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to click to create my first flower, and then I'm going to press the open square bracket a couple of times to scale down the size of this flower, and then a couple times more and I'll size it down, and I'll just continue along this line. So find this line handy to create just in case I want to put elements on the diagonal, because this red line is not going to be part of the tile later on, but it does allow me to line things up with some measure of accuracy. Now I also have other shapes here. I've got this sort of flower shape. Notice that if you paint over the line you get a sort of doubling. It's not cut off and joined together, it's actually painted over the line. So just be careful with that if that's not what you want. But you can go over the edge of the document, of course, and that's not going to impact it at all. I also saved some sort of petal shapes. Now for this one, if I want to rotate it, I can just come in here and rotate it around until I get it to sort of the petal angle that I want. And then I can also size it down or up. I want to bring it all the way around here. When you're looking at down here, it's not very handy to see, but if you increase the spacing, you'll be able to see exactly how your brush is rotating. And obviously, it wasn't rotating the direction that I thought it was. So let's just use that to make a better choice here. Now if I want to, I could use a different color. I can use color or black and white, it doesn't matter. I'm going to use a gray in here. So I might want to put a leaf behind the flower here. I'm thinking this is not the best leaf, so let's just go in here and let's go and find a better leaf to use. So I think this might be a better leaf. With brushes you do want to make them black because that's going to be the full solid color when you use it in your document. So don't sort of think that grey will be just fine, because if you want a dark green leaf, for example, you won't get a dark green leaf if you don't use black as your brush color. So let's just go and make a brush out of that. And there's another leaf down here. I'll turn that on, add a new layer, and draw out this leaf as well. Go back to our document. The leaf that we used most recently is going to be the one that is selected. Obviously needs to be a bit smaller. I am working with a lighter grey in this particular document. I want to take care that I don't overlap the line down here. So I'm just going to add a second leaf, and I'm going to move the leaves behind the flower. So as far as leaves and flowers and other elements that you can get from the Custom Shapes collection, let's have a look at another way of getting handy brushes, and that's from the type tools. So I'm just going to click on the type tool. Remember, I'm working in this case in a file that I'm only using for making brushes, and I'm just going to drop down my list of fonts here because I have a number of fonts that are actually what are called wingding style fonts, or fonts that have little elements in them. So here's one called Tombats. Now to see what's actually in the font, I'm going to go to Window and then Glyphs. And now with a font selected, I can actually see the elements that are inside that font. So if there's something in here that I want to use, I can create it as a type object and then save it as a brush. So anything you can get in terms of dingbats or fonts that have elements in them, sort of illustrative elements rather than actually letters, you can use those as well. Although of course you can use letters of the alphabet if you want to. Now I've found a font here called Princess BV that I happen to have, so I'm just going to click in the document and I'm going to click to add this character to the document. So this is a sort of ribbon shape, but there's another one that's a sort of heart shape here. There are little crowns, there are little flowers that I could use. So you may want to look around the web to see what sort of dingbat fonts that you can find that are going to give you elements that you could use as brushes. Now with this select, I'm going back to my type tool because you can see that light grey is what's in use here. Now I need to select my sort of type element and make sure that it's black so that I can actually use it as a brush. And I also want to make it much larger because at the moment at 150 points it is too small. So let's just put this type element in the middle of the document and then let's go and save that as a brush as well. So back into my working file, I don't need my glyphs panel any longer, so I can just close that up. I've got my brush selected here, so I might want to perhaps put in a little butterfly into my illustration here. Now another thing you may want to know how to do is to put a border around your tile. So to put a border around our tile, I'm going to add a new layer to the document. I'm just going to click on some other tool so that the brushes don't get in my face a bit. I'm going to click on the layer so it's selected. I'm going to choose select and then all. So you should see a selection around your image at this point. Then we'll go to edit and then stroke. And I'm going to add a stroke to my document. Now, because my stroke is going on the inside, once I line this up as a tile, it's going to be double the width. So whatever width you choose here now, you're going to get sort of double that when you actually make your tiles. So if you're making it into a pattern. So I'm just going to make that 20. I think that that's pretty good. It looks a little bit too little of a stroke, but that's all right because I'm going to get it being much thicker, or double the thickness when I actually come to use it. Now I think I might finish off with a circle in the middle of my document, so I'm just going to go to the brush tool. This time I'm going to select a very simple brush. It's just going to be a hard round brush. So here is a hard round brush. I'm going to make sure I've got my layer targeted. Just going to use the open and close square brackets to size my brush. I'm painting in black and I'm just going to click to add a circle in the center. Now if I'm pretty happy with this, which I am for now at least, I want to save this as a pattern tile. So I need to do a few things. I'm not worried about the mirror axis rotations because they're not going to be saved, but I am worried about these red lines. So I'm just going to turn those off for now so that they're not going to get in my way. The rest of this is going to be my pattern tile. So I'm just going to choose edit and in this case define pattern, and this is going to be saved as a pattern tile. So let's see how we might use this. I'm going to choose File and then New, and I'm going to create a much larger document at 6000 by 6000 pixels. I'm going to my pattern panel here, and the very last pattern in my patterns dialog is going to be this tile that I just created. And when I drag and drop it into my document, I get a document that is filled with this pattern. If I double click on the pattern object here in the layers panel, I can scale it down to say 65%, and you can see that it is repeating really nicely. Now I have another one that I made earlier, this one here. So this is another pattern tile. I also have it done as an offset. So let's see how we might do that. I'm going to go back to the pattern we were working on, and the bits I'm worried about are these here because they're not going to line up very well because they're over the edge. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this layer here. So I'm just going to drag it onto the plus symbol. I'm going to hide one away because I want to keep that one with the little loopy flowers at the edge, but this one here I want to get rid of those flowers. So I'm just going to the eraser tool and I'm just going to erase these flowers away. Again, the eraser tool is a tool that works with this symmetry, so you don't have to worry about erasing all of the flowers, you just erase the ones that are in this particular area. Now I'm going to save this as a pattern, so I'm going to choose Edit, Define Pattern, and this is a pattern without those edge pieces. So let's just go and test it at this stage. As you can see here, it is, when I click on it, doesn't have those flowers over the edge. This is the version with the flowers over the edge. This is the version without them. So let's see how we could create a sort of offset version of this pattern. Let's go back to this document that we're working in. What I'm going to do is go to the very top of the document, and I'm going to hold down 3 keys, Control, Alt and Shift, and then I'm going to press the letter E. And what that does is it makes what's called a composite. So I have a layer that has all these elements on it all in the one layer, but I still have all the other layers as well. So I'm going to make this into a smart object with Convert to Smart Object. And I'm going to open a new file for this because I don't want to mess up my current file. So let me just go and make a new 2000 by 2000 pixel file, exactly the same size. And let's go and drag and drop this smart object layer into the file. Now, just going to center it up in the file. Okay. So to make that design, which is a sort of half drop repeat, what we're going to do is we're going to image and then canvas size. And we're going to double the width of the document. So the previous width was 2000. I'm going to make it 4000. And in this box down here, I'm going to click on this option here. So this tile here is going to end up on this side of the document. Then we're going to have free space over this side. Just click OK. Control 0 to zoom so that we can see everything. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit as well. Okay. To create our pattern, we're going up here to the View menu and we're going to choose Pattern Preview and just click OK because we are already working with a smart object. Then I'm going to take this layer here, our smart object layer, this one, and I'm going to drop it onto the plus sign so I get 2 of them. And then I'm going to drag one of them up into position, and I'm just looking for the smart guides to show me when I've got it aligned. You'll see there's a pink smart guide that shows when I've got everything aligned. Now it's disappeared. Let me just try that again. There we are. There's our pink smart guide. So this is now our half drop repeat pattern. You click the check mark to just confirm that transformation, and then we're going into the patterns panel, which is sitting down here. I'm just going to click the plus sign and click OK, and you'll see that this new pattern has been added. Let's go back to our working document and let's click on this pattern. Now you can see that I've got a half drop repeat. So I've got this element here and then it drops down by half of the height in the next column, and it goes back up here. Once we're finished with this view, we can just go to View and then turn off Pattern Preview. Your document's going to look a bit different, but because that's the way it's been set up for making this half drop repeat. That's why I thought it was a really good idea to make a brand new document to make this half drop repeat in and not ruin our original document, which is still sitting here ready for us to potentially add other elements to. The nice thing about these brushes that you've made is that they're going to continue to appear in the brushes panel. They're just going to be in the bottom of the brushes panel, ready for you to use at any time. If you're concerned that you might lose these brushes if you reset your Photoshop preferences, which you will lose them if you reset your Photoshop preferences, I have a video that's linked up in the top corner of the video here that will show you how you can save your brushes so that you can always get them back if your Photoshop preferences are reset. You'll want to do the exact same thing with your patterns so that you don't lose them, because they would also disappear if you reset your Photoshop preferences. If you like carefully researched content like this, clearly presented in a step-by-step format so that you can get great results, then you'll love my Skillshare content. I'm a Skillshare top teacher. I have hundreds of short courses on Skillshare that you can access, along with thousands of other great courses, all for the price of a single subscription. If you're interested, there's a Skillshare coupon for you in the description below to use to sign up. Using this coupon benefits me as a creator, and it helps me continue to make free content available here for you also on YouTube. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. On the screen now, you'll see a video that I've hand-picked for you. If you enjoyed the video you've just watched, I know that you're going to really enjoy the one I've picked for you to watch next.